Derek Whitfield adjusted his tie for the third time that morning and surveyed the guitars hanging on the wall of Macari's music store. It was May 15th, 1968, a quiet Wednesday afternoon in London's Denmark Street. The legendary music shop had been serving professional musicians for decades, but Derek took particular pride in maintaining its reputation for excellence. At 24, Derek considered himself more than just a salesman. He was a guardian of proper musical technique. 2 years at the Royal Academy of Music had taught him the fundamentals: music theory, classical guitar technique, proper posture, correct hand positioning. He could sight-read complex compositions by Bach and Villa-Lobos, explain why certain chord progressions worked mathematically, and identify incorrect fingering from across the room. His professors had drilled into him that there was a right way and a wrong way to approach every instrument, and the right way had been established through centuries of classical tradition. When customers entered his domain, Derek saw it as his responsibility to ensure they understood music correctly. He'd corrected dozens of self-taught players over the months, guiding them toward proper form, saving them from developing bad habits that would limit their musical growth. The afternoon light filtered through the shop windows, illuminating rows of guitars. Gibsons, Fenders, Rickenbackers, each one positioned precisely, maintained immaculately. Derek believed professional instruments deserved professional treatment. The bell above the door chimed softly. Derek looked up to see a customer unlike any he'd encountered that week. The man wore a colorful patterned shirt that seemed to shimmer in the light, bell-bottom trousers that flared dramatically at the ankles, and leather boots that gleamed. His hair formed a perfect afro that defied gravity. Multiple rings adorned his fingers. He moved with quiet confidence, scanning the guitars with eyes that seemed to understand something Derek couldn't quite identify. Derek approached carefully. Despite the flamboyant appearance, the customer carried himself with the focused intensity of someone who knew exactly what he was looking for. "Good afternoon, sir. Can I help you find something specific?" The customer smiled, a gentle expression that seemed to carry hidden depths. "Just looking for a right-handed Stratocaster. Something that feels right." "Excellent choice," Derek said, warming to the topic. "We have several American models. Are you familiar with proper Stratocaster technique?" "I play a little." Derek led him toward the Fender section. The customer's hands moved immediately toward a white Stratocaster, lifting it from its stand with surprising familiarity. He turned it over, examining the tremolo bridge, running his fingers along the neck's contours. Then he did something that made Derek's carefully trained eye twitch with concern. The customer flipped the guitar completely upside down. The headstock, which should point right from the player's perspective, now pointed left. He adjusted his grip, positioning his hands as if this inverted orientation was perfectly natural. Derek watched in growing alarm as the customer began testing the string tension. Upside down, everything backwards. "Sir," Derek said carefully, "I think there might be some confusion. You're holding the guitar incorrectly." The customer looked up, eyebrows raised slightly. "Incorrectly. The headstock should be on your right side, not your left. The way you're holding it, the strings are in reverse order. The low E string should be closest to you, not furthest away. It's physically impossible to play properly in that position." Derek demonstrated with another guitar, showing the correct classical position he'd learned at the academy. "See? Right hand for picking, left hand for fretting. Your positioning has everything reversed." The customer nodded thoughtfully. "I understand what you're saying." "It's not your fault," Derek continued, encouraged by what seemed like receptiveness. "Many self-taught players develop incorrect habits. But if you want to progress beyond basic strumming, proper technique is essential. I could show you the fundamentals: how to hold the instrument correctly, basic finger positioning, standard tuning approaches." "Standard tuning approaches," the customer repeated, his voice carrying an almost musical quality. "Exactly. There are rules to music, established methods that work. What you're attempting would make chord formations nearly impossible. Complex passages would be beyond reach. Professional musicians follow these techniques for a reason." The customer was quiet for a moment, still holding the Stratocaster in that impossible position. His fingers moved subtly across the strings, not quite playing, just testing. "But you just played—I mean, The way you moved your hands. It's impossible according to everything I learned. Jimmy smiled. Not impossible. Different. The rules you learned, they're useful for many people, but they're tools to serve music, not the other way around. When the music needs something the rules don't cover, you adapt. The shop manager appeared, having heard the commotion. Mr. Hendrix, please excuse any inconvenience. This employee will be properly disciplined for any confusion. Jimmy held up a hand. No discipline necessary. Derek was trying to help a customer. That's good service. I'd like him to complete the sale, if that's acceptable. Derek's hands shook as he processed the purchase. Mr. Hendrix, I feel like an idiot. I tried to teach you how to play guitar. You tried to share knowledge you thought would be helpful, Jimmy corrected. That's what teachers do. But let me share something with you. He leaned against the counter, his manner becoming more intimate. Django Reinhardt only had 2 working fingers on his left hand. Tony Iommi lost his fingertips in an accident. They had to develop their own techniques. Those wrong techniques created entirely new sounds that changed music forever. Derek nodded slowly, beginning to understand. Keep studying theory. Keep learning classical technique. That foundation is valuable. But when you're helping customers, listen to what they're trying to create before you tell them they're doing it wrong. Jimmy signed the receipt and looked around the shop. Several other customers had gathered, drawn by the music, some recognizing him now. You play at all, Derek? Or just work here? I play, Derek admitted. Classical mostly, some jazz. I'm trying to be more versatile. You ever want to talk about different approaches to the instrument? Have the store call me. I'd be happy to show you some techniques they don't teach at the academy. Derek looked stunned. You do that? After you tried to help someone learn? Yeah, I'd do that. That's what musicians do. We help each other grow. 20 years later, in a 1988 interview for Guitar Player magazine, Derek Whitfield, now a respected guitar instructor with his own studio in Chelsea, would tell the story with complete honesty about his moment of humiliation that became his greatest lesson. His students often requested to hear it, especially those struggling with the rigid expectations of classical training. Jimi Hendrix could have destroyed my ego that day, Derek said, adjusting his glasses as he recalled the memory. I told one of the greatest guitarists in history that he was holding his instrument wrong. I was so certain of my knowledge, so confident in my training, that I couldn't see the music for the rules. Instead of embarrassing me, he taught me the most important lesson about music I've ever learned. He showed me that innovation often looks like error to the untrained eye. The interviewer asked what that lesson was. Rules exist to serve musicians, not control them. I spent 2 years learning the correct way to play. Jimmy spent 90 seconds showing me that correct is whatever creates the sound you're hearing in your head. Technique isn't about following rules perfectly, it's about finding your own voice. Were you embarrassed? Completely mortified, Derek laughed. But Jimmy was so gracious about it. He could have been dismissive or angry. Instead, he took time to teach me something I couldn't learn in any classroom. That's what mastery really looks like. Not showing off your knowledge, but helping others expand theirs. When Jimi Hendrix died in 1970, Derek kept the signed receipt from that day framed on his teaching studio wall. Students would often ask about it, and Derek would tell them the story of the day. He learned that the most important rule in music is knowing when to break the rules. The receipt became a reminder that expertise isn't about knowing all the answers. It's about staying humble enough to learn something new, even when it comes from someone who's doing everything wrong. Derek continued teaching classical guitar technique for the rest of his career, but he also taught his students about adaptability, about serving the music rather than serving the method, and about the difference between playing correctly and playing meaningfully. Jimmy didn't make me question classical technique, Derek would often tell his students. He made me understand its proper place. Technique is a foundation, not a prison. Master the rules, then have the courage to adapt them when your music demands something different. The story became legendary among guitar teachers and music store employees. A reminder that the customer standing in front of you might be holding their instrument wrong for reasons you haven't considered yet. And sometimes, if you listen carefully enough, that wrong technique might just be the sound of music finding a new way to exist. You went to music school, he asked. Royal Academy of Music, Derek said proudly. 2 years of intensive classical training, music theory, composition, proper technique development. I can read any piece of sheet music placed in front of me. That's impressive. Music isn't just about making noise, Derek continued, sensing an opportunity to educate. It's about understanding structure, following established principles. What you're attempting there, he gestured toward the inverted guitar, that's not how professional instruments are meant to be played. The customer looked down at the Stratocaster in his hands. Mind if I try it anyway, just to see how it feels? Derek hesitated. The customer seemed genuine, even humble. Perhaps a brief demonstration of the impossibility would prove the point more effectively than words. Very well, but please be gentle with the instrument. It's quite valuable. The customer walked toward one of the small amplifiers used for testing. He plugged in the cable, adjusted the volume knob with his thumb, and did something that made Derek blink in confusion. He began tuning the guitar. Upside down, by ear. Each string adjusted with precision that suggested intimate familiarity with the instrument's voice. How are you managing to... Derek began, then stopped. The tuning sounded perfect. The customer positioned himself in front of the amplifier. His left hand found the fretboard, fingers spreading across strings that should have been unreachable. His right hand hovered above the strings at an angle that defied everything Derek had learned about proper picking technique. Then he started playing. The sound that emerged from the amplifier made Derek's carefully organized understanding of guitar technique collapse completely. The opening notes of Purple Haze filled the shop with a clarity and power that seemed impossible. But this wasn't just the song Derek might have heard on the radio. This was something else entirely. The attack of each note was precise yet wild, controlled yet untamed. Derek could hear individual string vibrations, could feel the resonance of the amplifier against his chest. The customer's fingers moved across the fretboard with liquid precision, finding notes that shouldn't exist in that position. His right hand attacked the strings at angles that created textures Derek had never imagined possible. The way he manipulated the tremolo bar transformed simple notes into emotional landscapes, bending reality itself. Each phrase seemed to tell a story that Derek's classical training had never prepared him to understand. Then came the moment that shattered Derek's remaining composure. The customer leaned forward and began playing with his teeth. Not as a gimmick, not as showmanship, but as a natural extension of musical expression. The notes continued flowing, each one perfectly placed, perfectly controlled. Derek watched in stunned disbelief as complex passages emerged from what should have been impossible technique. He spun the guitar behind his head without missing a beat, the melody continuing seamlessly, his fingers finding frets by pure instinct. The shop had gone completely silent, except for the sound of the guitar. Derek realized his mouth was hanging open. His theories about proper technique, his understanding of physical limitations, his carefully memorized rules about what was possible with 6 strings and 10 fingers, all of it crumbled in the space of 90 seconds. The customer brought the song to a gentle conclusion, the final notes hanging in the air like smoke. He straightened up, the guitar returning to that impossible upside-down position, and looked at Derek with the same gentle smile. Still think I'm holding it wrong? Derek couldn't speak. His throat had gone completely dry. Oh my God, Derek whispered finally. You're Jimi Hendrix. That's right, Jimmy said quietly. And you're Derek, he added, reading the name tag. Can we talk for a minute? Derek nodded mutely, his entire sense of musical reality reorganizing itself in real time. Jimmy set the guitar down carefully. You weren't wrong about technique being important. Classical training, music theory, all of that has value. You should know those things. But here's what might not have been covered in your courses. He paused, making sure Derek was listening. I'm left-handed. Right-handed guitars are what's available, so I adapt them to work for me. I flip them upside down and retune them to match my natural hand positioning. The Academy might call it incorrect, but it works for my music. Derek stared at him, processing this information. There's no single correct way to play guitar, Jimmy continued. What matters is the music that comes out. If someone is creating something beautiful and meaningful, then their technique is right for them, even if it looks wrong to everyone else.